In this video, we're going to work on authentication with Google. For example, if I go to this event, I click on attend, I'm supposed to sign up in order to attend the event because I haven't signed up to the system yet. So this is similar to the real meetup.com here. I'm looking at this event and then I click on the attend button. Right now, I haven't signed up yet. It doesn't actually know that I have signed up. Before I log in to the system, I need to either I continue with Google or Apple or Facebook or something else, or I just sign up with my email. In our application, what I want to implement is not this part, not the regular cookie authentication. I'm going to only support one of them. Let's choose Google, right? So this is a OAuth workflow, and we're going to implement that. So which means that if I choose Google, then I can use my Google account in order to connect to Meetup and RSVP any event. So this is the purpose, right? So over here, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to show a list of buttons. Or in this case, I'm going to only work with Google, but if you want to have multiple, then you want to do the same process with other external authentication providers. But in this project, we want to just use Google as an example. Okay, so in order to enable this workflow, this OAuth workflow with Google, what we want to do is, first of all, we want to log in to your Google account. Okay, so I'm moving this window over to this here. So you can see that I've already logged in with my own Google account. And then what you want to do is, let's say you just come over here and you search Google Cloud Console. Okay, and once it shows, not the sponsored one, let's go down over here. It's this one, Google Cloud Platform. And once you get into this, if this is the first time you using it, you have to agree with this. And if you want to receive email updates, then you can check this. Otherwise, you don't have to, right? And you just say agree. And now you are supposed to select a project to work with. Well, let's go to select a project. So there is a WebAssembly demo project that I don't know when I work with this, but we're not going to use this. We're going to create a new project. And then let's just give this project a name. And let's say I'm going to call it my Meetup system. Okay. And you don't have to have an organization. So you just keep using the default one, which is no organization. And then you just click on the create button. Now it's trying to create a project for me, and now it's finished. Then you just click on select project. So once the project is selected, what you do is you can close this, and then you can trigger the left sidebar like this. Okay? So let's keep the sidebar closed. And then what we want to do here is we want to come over here, and then we search for API and services, and it is this one, APIs and services. So let's click on this. And once we are here, we go to the left sidebar and click on this OAuth consent screens because we want to enable OAuth for our project. Go over here. And then what we want to do is to, first of all, let's close this and then let's get started with Google Authentication Platform. Right? We want to configure that. And you can, again, give your application a name. You can call it the same name as before. So let's say my Meetup system. You can call it anything you want. And then you can input your support email address. I'm going to just use my own email address. And let's go next. And over here, I want to use external. Okay, so this is available to any test user with Google account. Your app will start in testing mode and will only be available to users that you add to the list of the test users. Okay, so if you're creating internal, this is only available within your organization. Right? But we don't have an organization. Let's select external and then just click on the next button. And this contact information is basically where Google sends you a notification. So you can just fill up your email address. So I'm going to fill up my own email address and then click on the next button. Here at finish, we'll just check this and click on continue. And then just click on this create button and it's showing the process is being created. So the OAuth configuration is created. So once the OAuth configuration is created, we need to create a client, right? Because our application is basically a client relative to Google. Okay, Google is basically the server, the OAuth server, and our application becomes the client. So therefore, we need to create a client under this project right here, my Meetup system. Okay, so here we don't have a client. We're going to add a new client over here, and then application type. We are creating a web application, and you can call it again. This is just a name here. Okay, so I'm gonna my Meetup system client. This doesn't have to be following this pattern. You can use any name you want. Okay, and then with the authorized redirect URL, this is a place we want to add our application. So our application URL, maybe I can just go over here, grab this. We come back to the configuration here, and this here follows a pattern. So we are using Google, so therefore we're going to say sign in -Google. So if you're using Facebook, I think the redirect URL is sign in Facebook, something like that, right? And if you're using Apple, it's probably this one. I'm not too sure. But sign in with Google, it's sign in Google. Right? This is not a pattern, but a convention, right? A convention that you have to follow. So just click on add URL. And well, not this one. So just delete this one. So we're just keeping one, and then click on the create button. We're creating the client with the information that we provided. Now we have a client ID and we have a client secret. So this is very important. You can copy from here. It doesn't really matter. You can copy it later. So once we have the client, then we can click on the client. Now it shows all the information for us. The important part is the authorized redirect URL. Right, so this is, we're going to install a NuGet package that is going to work with this application that we created here, right? This configuration that we created here. And that package is going to create this endpoint. You're not going to see that we're going to work on this and we're going to create an endpoint like this. No, we're not doing that. It's the NuGet package that has this. And all we have to do now is to grab the client ID and client secret. So this becomes our client's username and password, right? So this is the username and this is the password. So let's copy this and I'm going to delete this once I finish recording the video. You will have to create your own, right? So let's go over here. And what we want to do is we want to go to Meetup, right? The web application here, right click on it. And then I'm going to say manage user secrets over here. Click on this and you will have something look like this, right? And so this is basically the same thing as the app settings. You can consider it as the same thing app settings. It's just kind of additional, right? But it's not going to be checked into the source control. So you don't need to worry about having your credential leaked. So here I can say, this is my Google client ID, and then the ID just posted here. And now I'm gonna add my Google client secret, and it automatically generated a secret, but that's not the secret that we need to use. It is supposed to be this one. So we copied that into clipboard and then we paste it over here. So we have our Google client ID and Google client secret. By the way, these names can be anything. You don't have to call it Google client ID. You can just call it anything, right? You can call it client ID, and then this one call it client secret. But because potentially you can use more than Google, right? You can use Google and Facebook and anything else. So that's why I call it Google client ID. So once you have this, then you basically finished setting up the Google authentication part, right? Now we come back to our application and try to use Google authentication, right? Google OAuth. So to do that, we need to install a NuGet package. Right click on that, go to manage NuGet package, go to browse, and then over here we can say authentication.google. I'm going to use authentication.google. And it is authentication.google. Why it's not showing me? Yeah, it's supposed to be this one. Right? I wasn't sure. I'm not sure why it wasn't showing at the top. It's supposed to show at the top. Microsoft.ASP.NET Core.authentication.google. and select the latest version. Click on I accept. Okay, now we just wait till this becomes uninstalled. That means it's already installed. Okay, now we have that. Now we have the NuGet package installed. Now we need to configure it. Let's go to program.cs, and we always configure the NuGet packages over here. Right, so what we want to do is that we go to the place where we do dependency injection, and we're going to configure not reserved pages. We're going to configure authentication. Okay, and I'm going to say builder.services.add authentication. It's trying to generate the code for me, but that's not really the code I want to use. So I'm going to actually remove this part, and then I'm going to say options. Okay, so we have different parts in our application that may require different type of authentication scheme. Okay, so the when the user hasn't logged in and the user tries to go to a page or a resource in your application that is protected, that's called a challenge. Okay, so we first of all need to configure the challenge scheme. Okay, so what is the challenge scheme? We can say it is Google defaults dot authentication scheme. Okay, it's a Google authentication scheme. Now, once you log in and the information, like your user information, is already known because the user has already logged in, that is a different type of scheme. That's what we want to configure here. It's the authentication scheme. And in this case, we are going to use cookie to keep the information, right? Google is only helping us to do the challenging. We're challenging the user to provide username and password, make sure the username and password is correct. But once we got the user information, we use the authentication scheme to test the user to see whether the user has logged in or not. Right? That's why we're using cookie authentication defaults dot authentication scheme. Now, the next one is a sign-in scheme that we also want to make sure that we configure. Right? And for signing in, we're also using cookie authentication scheme as well. Okay, so once we configure this part, then of course we want to add cookie. Okay? And the cookie is when we don't need to configure this part. We're just telling that this cookie authentication is using the cookie authentication default scheme name here, okay, which we configured right here and here. And now we want to add Google, okay, because we added Google package. Now it's trying to generate the code for us. We're gonna accept it, but we don't need to configure all of these, at least not in this project here. But what we want to configure is the client ID and client secret, right? And you see it's trying to generate this type of pattern. What we had over there is called Google Client ID and Google Client Secret. But if we want to follow this pattern, that's fine too. We can follow this pattern. But I don't want to see the green circle line here, so I'm gonna remove the green circle line by adding this. Okay, if there's no client ID, no secret, we're just going to use empty string. Now, Google Client ID, we can follow this pattern in order to do that. So we just need to come over here and just create a new node over here. And then I hope it automatically generated this for me, and it did. So roughly verify that it's the same, and this one is also the same. And let's delete this. Okay. And we don't need the redirect URL to be setting up right here. Right, we don't need the redirect URL to be set up here. Now this, then no, that's wrong. Let's go back. We forgot to delete the Google keyword there. So let's manage user secrets again. And coming back over here. So client ID, client secret. And that is correct. Okay, let's go back. Okay, now we're following this pattern, Google colon, right? And the client ID, and then Google colon secret. So we're finished setting up right here, and we don't need to add these options. So we want to close it with bracket and semicolon. And then before we execute any of this mapping method, let's add authentication. So use the authentication middleware. So now we finally finish the connection between our application and the project that we set up on Google. Right? So we set up everything here. Now what we want to do now is to let's actually go to this over here and then go to meetup.com. And what we want to do now is when we click on the attend button, we want to see a list of buttons, right, for external authentication providers. So let's go to the place where we display that dialog. And that, I believe, is in the RSVP event, and it belongs to this RSVP event footer component over here, right? And it is inside the sign up to attend this event. So inside here, inside this container, and we want to display that button. Right now we only have one button, but this is the place where we do it. So first of all, we need to get a list of external login providers. Okay, so let's go over here and declare the AI enumerable of authentication scheme. Okay, so rescue line, we do a control dot, import the namespace, and then we close this, and we're gonna say this is external login providers. And now we're going to override, let's override the on init. Let's see whether it generates the code for me. Okay, it does. Now it knows that I'm trying to do this. Authentication service, it's not the authentication service. What we need to do now is to inject something so that we can get the external authentication scheme. And that thing is called the Authentication scheme provider. Okay, it's called this. It automatically changed to that, which I don't like it. I'm gonna just call it authentication scheme provider just to be very clear. Okay, and then let's copy this, come over here and replace this. You can see, no, it doesn't work. So let's just try to use ItaliCsense. Let's get all schemes async. Okay, this is, you can't just get external schemes with this scheme provider, but you can get all of the schemes. And this means that it's going to include our cookie authentication provider. But we're going to filter that out. We're going to filter that out when we display it right here. Now, we want to be defensive. And when I say this, if this dot external login providers is not now, right? If it's not now we're going to loop through the external login providers. So when I say for each var provider in this dot external login providers, and then we are going to first of all make sure that the provider display name is, actually we don't have to do it now. I'm going to show you why we need to do it. But right now we're going to have a button, right? And the type of this button is going to be just a regular button, not bottom. Okay, and the class is going to be, let's just use a primary button like this. And then on click, okay, and this is the place where we're going to try to make the user login through the external provider. We're going to have a login, we're going to say login with external provider, and we pass in the provider name over here. Okay, and then we're gonna I know we don't have this method yet, but we're gonna write it and then we're gonna implement it. later. Okay, so when I say this is login with provider.display name. Okay, now we're gonna come to implement this. Let's scroll down, and perhaps we're gonna do it right here. So private, and it's trying to generate the code for me. We don't actually need it to be async. Let's remove this, and then we don't need this. Let's write. First of all, we do need redirect URL, and that can be pretty simple. We can say this is sign in callback. Well, let me try to implement this, and then I'll explain what it means. So here we need to use a navigation manager. Let's inject the navigation manager. So inject navigation manager, and then navigation manager. Let's scroll back. Okay, and here we're going to use navigation manager to navigate us to a place, and it tried to generate this for me. I'm going to change it a little bit. We're not going to use the identity system. We're going to just use our own. So authentication, and then here this is going to be the provider name, provider display name, and followed by the redirect URL. So it's going to be something like this. So redirect URL equals the redirect URL. So provider, I probably had a typo there. Let's fix this. We need to make sure that we say force load equals to true, because we're gonna give up the signal R channel. Okay? We're gonna redirect the user forcefully, kind of like a reload of the resource. Right? We're gonna give up the signal channel. Okay, so once we have this, how do we respond? Like, what is this URL? And this is important. We need to implement this. And the simplest way to implement this is, we only have a Blazor system, right? So how do we handle a URL like this, like an endpoint like this? We can create an endpoint, right, with minimal API type of endpoint. So let's go to program.cs. At least temporarily, we're going to implement our endpoint over here. Okay, so we can have so the map static assets. We want that to happen first, and then we want to add the minimal API handling over here. So I'm going to say this is map get. Okay, and then the URL that we specified here is going to happen right here. So we're going to copy this whole thing, and then go over here. Let's actually do it. Let's actually try to accept code, accept the code that is generated by AI. Well, it doesn't generate well, so I'm gonna just paste in my code. Okay, and then let's accept it. Okay, and this time it generates something that is actually useful. So I do need the provider name to be passed in over here, because I do have a root template that contains a parameter, a root parameter, and then I do need a context, so it knows what I'm trying to do and it generated for me. Actually, you know what? I don't think we even need a redirect URL here. Let's actually get rid of this. Yeah, I think the redirect URL can be added in the minimal API. So let's remove this redirect URL, and so this would just take the user from here to /authentication/provider, and that's going to be processed right here. And then this is a place where we can specify the redirect URL. Okay, so what we are trying to do here is to send the user to Google, okay? And then we need to specify a redirect URL in order to know once Google finish signing in and then pass the information back to the NuGet package. Now the NuGet package needs to take all of the information from the Google and then send that information to somewhere, right? So what is that somewhere? That somewhere is what we specify in here with the redirect URL. Okay, so what we can do is we can hard code it right here, or you can configure it in the client secret, in the user secrets. but let's just hard code it in here. So I'm gonna say sign in, callback. You can actually call it anything. Right? You can call it anything. So we have this redirect URL, and then I do need a property. Why I need a property? Because you see this context, and then we have a challenge async, right? And this challenge async needs a provider, which comes in from here, and then this property. Okay, so this is the authentication property, and we need to create this authentication property. Right? So it's red squiggly line. I'm gonna import namespace to remove the red squiggly line. Now the authentication property takes the redirect URL from here. Now we're gonna take user. So this call over here, context, which from HTTP context, takes the user to Google. Okay, that's how it works. And then when it comes back, it goes to the NuGet package. Eventually, it's gonna hit this URL. Right? It's gonna look for this URL, but if it doesn't exist, it's gonna fail. Okay? So that's why now we need to implement the second endpoint, which is the sign in callback. You see, it knows exactly what I need, and I hope it knows to generate more, but it doesn't. So over here, it's going to be the same thing. We're gonna use HTTP context, okay, and then I'm gonna just say context goes to, and then generate the code for me now, but it doesn't, yeah, because here we're gonna have a lot of code to write. Now remember here, this is when the NuGet package already triggered, right? It takes the information from the Google, right? From Google, and then it calls this endpoint. And now what we need to do is to get that information from the NuGet package, or from Google. So what we can do is to say context.authenticate async, and we want to use the cookie authentication scheme, and then we're going to get the result. So once we do the authentication, then ASP.NET Core, which is still using the NuGet package, taking the information from Google, and then it create this claims principles, which is like a security context that contains the information that represents the user. Okay? And this result is a authentication result. Now, what we can say here is that if here you see the code here is trying to regenerate the claims, but I think we already have the claim, so I'm gonna ignore the generated code. I'm gonna say if the result dot succeeded. I thought it has a succeeded. Oh, okay. This is wrong. This is a async method. That's why I couldn't get the succeeded. Okay, succeeded. So if it's not succeeded, and if the principal is null, so this user principal is the security context. Okay, contains the user information. If it's null, then should we redirect the user back to the home page without letting the user know what is actually going on? Or should we create an error page? Maybe we can think about creating an error page later. Right, so let's add a to-do. So let's say an error page. But for now, let's just redirect back to the home page. Okay, and then so once code comes over here, we know that the authentication is actually successful. Then what we can do is we can say context.sign in async, right? And then we provide again with the authentication scheme, which is cookie authentication scheme, and then we provide principal. We probably don't need the properties, and it is a async method, so we use await. So here, by signing in, we create a cookie that stores the user information. Not really sure this is necessary, but let's write it here, and then we're gonna observe the developer tool and see what happens. Okay, so once we are in, which means we write the user information in the cookie, basically the security context in the cookie. So which security context is this one? Then for every request after that, the information is going to pass to the server right here, and then the server is going to know that the user has already signed in, right? So after that, we just redirect the user back to home page. All right, so I think we had this whole process, and then we need to do a little bit testing now. So here we take the user to the Google, and we're gonna expect that everything works well, hopefully. And then I'm gonna set a breakpoint. Once the information comes back from Google, we want to see that this endpoint is triggered because it's passed over. It needs to be triggered. So let's run the application now. Okay, it's on the other screen. So let's select an event, and let's click on the attend button. Okay, and the attend button, well, I'm not sure. Let's go back to, I'm not sure I have implemented that completely yet. So let's go to the top, and which is right here. We click on attend. This part is actually not implemented yet. So what we want to do is to click on this. Oh, it's already done. So once the user click on the attend, this box is being displayed. Okay, the part that I haven't implemented is to check whether it has already logged in or not. If the user has already logged in, we don't need to pop up this dialog. But right now it's just always popping up. But that doesn't affect our testing. Okay, so we can go ahead with the testing. Let's click on the attend, and you can see that it says sign up to attend this event, and then it has login with, which means that we have a display name, right, that is empty. So why do I say so? Let's actually stop debugging. Here you can see that we are looping through the external providers, right? And then we're showing the display name. If the display name is empty, what does it mean? It means this is the cookie authentication scheme, right? Because in our program.cs, we added two types of authentication scheme, which is the cookie authentication and the Google defaults, the Google authentication. Let's go back over here and let's filter out the provider. Let's say if provider dot display name. So I'm gonna say if string dot is now or empty null or white space. That's probably better. Okay, if it's not null or white space, then we're gonna display it. Okay, so this will filter out the cookie authentication scheme because we don't want user to use cookie authentication. We just want to use the external providers. So now let's go back, and then we have this issue once we start the application, because this window didn't close. So therefore the singleton ones didn't get lost, and it still remembers the previous one. So let's go over here and go back. You can see that basically cleared it because we do clear it. That's not a problem. Once we deploy to the, let's say you deploy to Azure, I believe it's going to work properly. Right? If you do care about that, then I believe you can fix it. But I don't want to spend too much energy on other things. That is not that important. So let's still go to this event and click on attend. Now you can see we only have this login with Google. And now it's the point to see whether the coding in the past hour is working for us or not. Let's click on the login with Google. Okay, it's taking me to the screen, right? Which I have these account already logged in. That's why it asked me to choose. So I'm going to choose one of them. I'm going to choose my own email address over here. And then it says sign in to this. Remember, this is the one that we configured on Google Cloud Console. And we say continue. And now it's back. Okay, it's back. So let's open up Developer Tool and click on the wrong button. Press on the wrong button. And then let's go to this tab, Application. And let's go to Cookie. So you can see that we have two cookies here. The first one is anti-forgery. And the second one is our cookie. right? So this is the one that is generated by the sign in. Where is it? The in the program.cs. So we have this. Well, it didn't. This breakpoint isn't triggered. Probably we forgot to run debug, right? Because it must have executed this line already, right? Executed this line already. Otherwise, it wouldn't create that cookie. And this inside this cookie, it contains all of the user's claims. All of the user claims. Once we have this cookie, then we can we know that we already signed in. So that means that if we go to the any event and we click on this, we shouldn't be asked to sign in anymore, right? So this part is it needs to be implemented, right? So you see we didn't use debug, right? Otherwise it would be we have to stop it. So I forgot to debug, but anyhow, I'm pretty sure this is working, and I'm also sure that I do need the sign in async, otherwise it wouldn't generate the cookie. So let's go back and let's go to the RSVP slides over here, and what we need over here is to use the authentication state provider. I believe that's what it's called. So let's go to the top and inject the authentication state provider namespace. Let's just write it, and then it doesn't like it, and we do a control dot. Yeah, we're missing a namespace. Okay, so we have authentication state provider, and then we need to scroll down. We need to tell whether the user has logged in or not. Okay, and for that, we first of all declare a variable here, and we're gonna call it, this is the authentication state. Did it generate that for me? Not yet. Okay, I'm gonna say authentication state. And with a question mark, I'm going to say this authentication state. So with this, I'm going to come into the uninitialized async over here. Okay. And I'm going to get the authentication state from here. Await. So authentication state provider. Okay. And then I'm going to say get authentication state. So authentication state. Oh, I used the wrong one. So this is authentication scheme provider, not the state provider. I need the state provider right here. And then this is the get authentication state async. Okay. And once I have this, then in the attend method here, right, event hook, I need to check whether the user has logged in or not. So this is not entirely correct. We need to make sure, first of all, it's not now. And at the same time, the user is not authenticated, right? Only when the user is not authenticated do we actually display this dialog. So let's move this inside. So here we're going to say authentication not, and then question mark. Maybe you add another question mark. Why is displaying this? Cannot be applied to Boolean and Boolean. Okay, so it doesn't like that. So this is Boolean, right? So we want to make sure that this is also Boolean. That's why we're going to add false over here. Why this still doesn't work? Perhaps we need to add parentheses. Let's add parentheses. Okay, now this is good, but this is not the thing I'm expecting. I need to make sure it's equal to false. Okay, so inside that parenthesis is just basically saying that if is authenticated is null, then we use false, right? And if it's false, then we're gonna show the dialog. Otherwise, we don't want to show the dialog. And let's run this, and let's see what differences it makes. So let's come over here. Remember that cookie is still here. See, the cookie is still here because we didn't clear the cookie yet. And let's click on the attend button. And now you can see nothing is happening, right? Nothing is happening. Absolutely. Let's delete this and then click the refresh button. And now let's click on the attend button. You can see this time the dialog shows, right? And then if I go through this process, select my user, now it redirects me back, and it looks like nothing is happening, but the user has already signed in because the cookie is generated, right? Now come over here, click on the set temp button, nothing is happening. And this is exactly what we need here. But it's just not so clear that the user has already logged in. And so supposed to be showing up right here when the user has logged in. Right? So there has to be a status, like a login status that displays. So let's implement that. Let's try to implement that. Let's go to Solution Explorer. And the login status is not a like a business logic here. It is a system logic. And I want to create that inside the component right here in the shared folder. So let's create a Blazor component here. And let's call this one login status component. Login status component. And inside here, this is where we want it to be displayed in the main layout, because see, in the main layout we have this top bar here, and something needs to happen, I believe right here, right? Something needs to happen right here, and that is going to be the login status component. So we can write it here. It's completely empty now, right? But let's go to the login status component here and then try to implement that. So I'm gonna just start writing. This is going to be a UL, and then I'm gonna say class is nav bar dash nav automatic, and inside here I want to know whether the user is authenticated or not, right? So that's the logic that we implemented in the slice, the RSVP slice. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to copy this code, and let's minimize this. Come over here, and then I'm going to copy just another code over here, another line of code over here to the code block over here. And authentication state and everything is not color coded. That's because the namespace and everything. So let's inject or copy and paste those over here. Okay, so this one again, we're going to override on init. Let's see whether it generates code for me or not. It does, and it's already giving me some code here, but that's not what I want. I'm going to delete this, and I don't need these schemes, so this one I'm going to delete. I don't need the scheme. And then I'm going to have another variable to say whether the user has authenticated or not, right? So once I get the state, I can get the user now. So from the state, so authentication state dot user, and then I'm going to say is authenticated equals user dot identity, right? Dot is authenticated, and if it's not, then I'm going to just use false. And I'm going to write something here. So if the user is already authenticated, so what kind of code does it generate? Let's see whether I can reuse it. Okay, it generate this, right? And it says if it's authenticated, then it's going to show logout. And I don't need this href because I'm going to create it as a button. So I'm going to delete all of that. So it has a logout and then has a login. So this code here, I believe, is quite accurate. And I'm going to make sure it looks like a button. So text dash light is going to be BTN, and it's going to be a BTN link button. Okay. And then the same type of classes is going to be applied right here for the logout button. But for logout, I'm going to also display the span here, which contains the username. So I'm going to say span and then class, and then again, this is nav link, text light, and So I'm gonna say hello because the user has already logged in, and then we're gonna have a username here, right? And for that, we need to add the username. So string username empty, and then we're gonna get the username right here. So if authenticated, then we're gonna populate the username. Okay, so then this is displayed here, and then a logout button. Then on click, I'm gonna say log out. Okay, this is logout method. We're gonna implement later. Not this. We're gonna use a @ sign. Okay, and then login, same thing, login. Now I'm gonna scroll down and try to implement those two. Now it tried to generate this for me. Let's see whether this is accurate or not. Login. So this is definitely not something I want, right? What I need is, remember, we're not using our own authentication. We're using external providers, and the only thing we're using is Google. So I want to have the same pop-up, right? The same pop-up. So that's when we need to look at our code, right? RSVP. In this footer here, we implemented this whole thing, and this is not entirely correct. But I don't want to make everything correct first. I want to write code and then refactor the code. Now it's the time to refactor the code. So let's look at this code. Container. This can be extracted out, right? Because you see, we need it here, and we also need it in the login status. Perhaps later we need it somewhere else. So this, I'm going to extract it out into another component. And I'm going to call it, maybe I'm going to call it external login buttons component. Remember, this component is a reusable component. So that's why I'm going to add it under the shared folder. So add Blazor component, and I'm going to call it external login buttons component. Click on add. I'm going to go to RSVP, and I'm going to cut this over here. And of course, it has all of these problems, and we need to fix that because we're just refactoring. So I'm going to take this external login providers. I'm going to cut it. Actually, we don't need it from there. I'm going to move it over here, and then authentication scheme, control dot import namespace. And let's go over here. Let's actually copy this whole thing, paste it here again. And of course, we don't have the authentication state, and we don't need it. We only need to get the authentication providers. Now, again, we need dependency injection. So come to the top over here. I'm gonna do inject authentication scheme provider. Okay, we have that. Now we need to move this method. So let's go down. Let's take this method, come over here, paste it here, and we need the navigation manager to be injected. Let's go to the top, inject the navigation manager. And I think we have everything ready over here, but coming back, we need to delete some of this code. We don't need it here. And our code here should be the external login buttons. Okay, so we need to run this application again, making sure that refactored functionality still works. Let's run the application now without debugging. You see this is being refreshed. Not sure whether it's able to rejoin. Let's give it some time. It looks like it doesn't rejoin. Let's see. It's because this is not implemented yet. Login, logout. Let's actually just create another thing here, and let's call it logout. And now let's run the application again. Okay, so it's running. Now we're having the same issue here. See, by the way, it's showing logout, right? Which means that it recognizes that our cookie is there, and we're gonna implement the logout functionality so that we don't have to manually delete the cookie. So let's do that later, but for now we do need to delete the cookie because we want to test it. So delete the cookie. I'm going to refresh this. Go to any event, click on attend Okay, still working the same way as before, and that's pretty important. That means our code is working. So we do have the thing is working, which means that the external login buttons is being displayed. Now in the login status component over here, what do we need? We need to have a dialog that pops up when we click on the login, right? Login button. And that's why we want to go to, just put it anywhere. Let's put it on the bottom here. I want to have a dialog component, right? It's a dialog component. So title is login, right? I need this. And then ref is, I'm going to call it login dialog component. Maybe login dialog is fine. And now dialog body contains the external login buttons. That's correct. And then over here, I'm going to say this is a login dialog. Okay. And once I have that, I'm going to say if is authenticated is false. So if it's false, then I'm going to use login dialog to show the external login buttons. When the logout button is clicked, this is a place where we want to sign out. But this is a Blazor component. I mean, a Blazor component. It's not very easy to get and not very natural to get the HTTP context. So what we can do is we can use the API endpoint, which we created in program.cs. And we're going to refactor this code, right? We don't want this to be just making the program.cs bigger and bigger. We want to change it to somewhere else. But for now, let's just continue writing in program.cs, and then we're going to refactor later. Okay, so what I want to do is I'm going to create another endpoint over here. And then this is actually a signing out, and it sort of knows that I need to do sign out, right? And that's why it's generating this code for me. So I'm going to accept it. Okay, sign out, that's fine. I'm going to use this URL, and then use async method sign out, signing out with cookie scheme, right? And then redirect to homepage. This code can absolutely be used 100%. Let's save it. Coming back over here, and then we want to navigate the user, right? Navigate to sign out, and we want to force it, right? Giving up the what's it called? The signal channel. And this one we don't need the async either. Okay, so do we have any problem? Do we okay, we do have navigation manager, and I believe this is good. Let's run the application again and make sure everything runs properly. So see here, it displays this login button, which means that we don't have the cookie. You can see that we don't have the cookie, right? So now let's click on the login button, and it shows me this. This is perfect. It's a success. And then let's click on the login with Google button. And it's taking me to this page where I already have this account logged in. Otherwise, I have to type username and password. Right? So I'm going to select one of them. And then it just takes me back. Now it shows me hello Frank Liu. So it knows my name, right? Where does it know? It's inside the cookie as claims. Right? First name, last name, and an email address. I believe this is just name, the full name. And then there is a log button. Right? So coming back over here, because it knows that I have already logged in, therefore, when I click on the attend button, nothing is happening. But I need to implement this a little bit. Although in this video, we have almost finished everything about Google authentication. But I want to implement a little bit about this attend button. So let's go to the slice, RSVP slice over here. We are going to add another dialog here. So that dialog is the RSVP confirmation dialog. So I'm going to say dialog, actually confirmation dialog, and then I'm going to say confirm dialog. Going down over here, create this confirm dialog. Now I'm going to take this and I'm going to say that if the user has already signed in, so I want to show this is incorrect. You already signed in. I'm going to change to something else, right? I'm going to say, are you sure you want to RSVP this for this event? And if the user says yes, we're going to do something here. But I guess in this video, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just leave this empty. This is going to be next video probably. So this should be working. So here you see I'm still logged in, right? And if I click on attend button, now it asks me to confirm whether I really want to RSVP, because I don't want to like making mistake, right, for the user. So click on cancel and try again. It says yes. Click on yes, it closes, but it doesn't actually do anything because we didn't implement it. Now let's go to Meetup. Like homepage, it still shows hello Frank Liu. Of course, you can do something like in the actual Meetup, right? Once you log in, it's gonna display your avatar here. You can implement something like that, but I'm not going to do that in this project, right? You can also log out from here. So you log out from here. Now, if you go to any event, you click on attend, it asks you to log in again. Same thing, you can log in directly from here. You don't have to go to any event to log in. You can log in directly from any page, right? You can log in from the organizers page. Of course, we're gonna work on protecting organizer pages later, right? But right now, it's not being protected. These pages are not being protected. That's fine. But I'm going to just show you that you can click on the login button anywhere and it's working. So now I think it's time to do just the final cleanup. Right? We need to maybe a few places, maybe just because as far as I remember, program.cs, this is the part that I need to clean up. These mapping methods or minimum API endpoints need to be removed. I mean, not removed, but moved. And where do I move it? It's going to be in the shared folder. And I'm going to create another folder here. And I'm going to call it endpoints, or maybe API endpoints. Let's just call it endpoints. Okay. And I'm going to create a class. I'm going to call it authentication. Remember, all of this endpoint so far is for authentication. So I'm going to call it authentication endpoints. So this is going to be a static, okay, static class. And I'm going to have a static extension method, okay, static void. And this is called map authentication endpoints. And it's trying to generate something for me. But it's wrong. I don't want this endpoint root. I'm going to use just the application. So web application. Okay. Now, I'm going to go to program.cs. And the reason why I use web application is because this app is the web application, right? Because I'm going to come over here and just cut this whole thing over. Go over here and paste it over here. So this app is this app, and you can see there's no complaints, right? No squeaky lines. Coming back to this place, I'm going to add those code back by just calling app dot, what's it called? I forgot. I think it's map authentication endpoints. I can't remember. So let's go back over authentication endpoints over here, and it's map authentication endpoints, correct? Map authentication endpoints. It doesn't like it. Let's do a control dot import namespace, and now it's fine. Okay, so let's take a look at our code and see whether we have anything else that we need to clean up. So main layout has this login status, which is clean already. Let's take a look at login status, which is the one that we just added. I believe everything is done properly and nothing needs to be changed. Now let's examine the RSVP event footer over here. I think the RSVP event footer component looks also pretty good. Yeah, I think everything we have looks pretty good, and then it works pretty good. Okay, let's do a final testing. Let's follow the entire workflow. making sure that it's connected. Right now, the user is not logged in. So if I go to any event, I click on attend, it's going to show this. And then if I go through this, select a user from Google, now I come back, the user has logged in, right? And then I can select this and click on attend, and it shows me, are you sure you want to do RSVP? And then if I say yes, the window is closed, but it's not doing anything because we didn't implement it. But that's fine, we're gonna implement it probably in the next video. And then finally, well, let's test another event because we have been always using this. Let's say Meetup 6, no details, that's fine. Click on attend, confirm dialog, that's correct, cancel. Now, final functionality is logout, right? And then let's go to this event, click on attend, right? We can do it here. We see this. So this is a correct workflow. Now, finally, I want to go to meetup.com and I want to log in from here instead of from the individual event. Okay, so just logging from here, make sure that if I go to any event, let's say this event doesn't have a picture, but I should be able to RSVP, right? So it says confirm, are you sure? So this entire workflow works as expected, and then I will see you in the next one.